What's up Supreme Team, you're here with Jerk Supreme and Wayfinder is almost here. Closed beta is around the corner, May the 10th, and early access is sometime summer 2023. And at this point you're wondering what Wayfinder you should be and what class is best for you. Today I'm going to be going through each Wayfinder, their abilities, their general style, and the level of complexity according to the developers themselves. Now I'm going to be going through each Wayfinder in order of their complexity level from easiest to hardest. Before I get into it, be sure to check out my other video where I go over Season 1 and what we can expect in that. And if you're new here, consider hitting that subscribe button because I'll be covering a lot of Wayfinder leading up to its release. Without further ado, let's go. First off, we have Wingrave. He is a Templar whose signature weapon is a trusty sword and shield called Bastion. He is merely combat focused and has many support and defensive abilities, making Wingrave a good starter for new players. His abilities are Righteous Strike. Hitting an enemy causes an explosion of healing energy to shoot out and heal Wingrave and nearby allies. Radiant Pulse. Forms a divine shield that blocks projectiles and boosts defense of allies standing behind it. Judgment. Marks enemies for judgment. Anyone hitting a judged enemy will restore their own health. Divine Aegis, a powerful barrier that makes anyone standing in it immune to damage and heals them over time. His passive ability is called Healing Pulse. Merely finishes heal Wingrave and one nearby ally. Wingrave's weapon ability is Power Bash. Shield Bash to do massive impact and guard break damage. Wingrave is considered the least complex out of all Wayfinders, offering a lot of healing and defensive options, giving Wingrave a lot of sustainability, and is straightforward in how these abilities all work. If you're new to these types of games, Wingrave is definitely a good option, but just because Wingrave is considered the least complex, doesn't mean it's going to be overlooked. Wingrave is next on my list, after Silo or Kyros. Speaking of Kyros, he is next up. Kyros is your mage in Wayfinder, and his signature weapon is a scythe called Epitaph. Kyros is best used at range and deals magical damage. He has a complexity rating of 1.5 and his abilities are offensive focused. His abilities are Savage Rake. Rakes the ground with violent energy, dealing damage to all enemies in front of Kyros. Arcane fragments can be consumed to cast Savage Rake at no cost. Siphon Radiant. Releases a wave of energy around Kyros that damages enemies and absorbs arcane power, reducing cooldowns and getting an arcane fragment. Arcane Focus. Marks enemies in an area. As enemies are hit, the mark builds up in power and detonates at max, or when it expires. Shockwave. Conjures shock and awe from the sky, resulting in a gigantic fist, dealing massive area damage. His passive ability is Arcane Fragments, which we have mentioned before. Generate Arcane Fragments by using Siphon Radiant on enemies and landing combo finishes. Arcane Fragments are automatically consumed to grant extra charges of Savage Rake, and his weapon ability is Arcane Harvest. A spinning slash that deals damage in a 360-degree arc and steals ability power from enemies, increases the player's ability power per enemy hit. Kyros is another entry point for new players who are interested in the magic archetype and want to focus mainly on dealing damage rather than defensive support. I'd say Kyros earns the higher complexity rating due to the arcane fragment mechanic, but it's nothing overly complex. Next up we have Silo. This is my pick and is who I'm going for first in Wayfinder. Silo is your tactician who can be quite versatile depending on the situation you're in. His signature weapon is his rifle called Longshot. His abilities can deal various effects to enemies. They are a mix of support and control and are mainly AoE, otherwise known as area of effect, and can be chained off one another for bigger damage and to have a big impact on the battlefield. His abilities are Firebomb. Toss a firebomb that ignites enemies, dealing damage over time. Causes a chain reaction with Oil Bomb. Oil Bomb. Leaves a pool of oil in front of Silo, slowing enemies and causing them to take additional damage. Radiant Clone. Dash backwards, leaving behind a Radiant Clone. The clone will taunt nearby enemies into attacking it until it expires or is destroyed. Ground Zero. Silo sends Egg out to shock all enemies in the area for a short time, slowing them and dealing damage over time. His passive ability is Strategic Advantage. Deals bonus melee and range damage to enemies that are debuffed. His weapon ability is Deadeye. 3 Deadeye weak spots appear on every enemy in range. Hitting these weak spots result in high damage and guaranteed crits. Silo is rated a bit more complex than the previous two Wayfinders, mainly due to Silo's abilities having a lot of synergy with one another, and then being used properly in order to provide the most damage. Silo is still a good entry point for newcomers, but they'll just need to be wary of his synergy, but won't take too much to pick up. Next up we have Senja. Senja is a gladiator who loves to showboat with a showboat mechanic working into her abilities, and wields her sword called Colossus. Senja is suited for close combat, but her abilities are very similar to that of the tank in MMOs, allowing heat to be taken off other players, while also applying buffs to herself to mitigate damage. Her abilities are Gladiator Pummel. Punch forward, then hold to showboat. On release, Senja punches again and buffs her next weapon attack. Fully showboating increases the damage of the follow-up punch. Gain Favor. Hold to showboat for the roaring crowd, filling your favour. On release, taunts nearby enemies while buffing Senja and her allies. Lightning Grasp. Use lightning to pull all displaceable enemies towards Senja in a large area. Grand Finale. In the form of a lightning spear, Senja charges to smash an enemy, dealing massive damage to them and fully filling the crowd's favour. Her passive is Crowd Favourite. Holding Gladiator Pummel and Gain Favour abilities will cause Senja to showboat. While showboating, she cannot be staggered, takes reduced damage, and increases the crowd's favour. As the crowd's favour increases, Senja gains attack damage and ability power. Her weapon ability is called Gladiator Slice. Performs a quick melee attack that buffs the next ability. Using Slice again will perform an empowered slice, dealing additional damage up to 2 times. So as you can see, her abilities are very tank-like, such as enemy pull and taunts, and she has the crowd favour that can also assist in damage mitigation. These systems explain why she is considered more complex than the previous Wayfinders. Last but not least, we have Niss. Think of Niss as your rogue. Niss is best utilised constantly on the move, using shadows to damage her enemies. Niss moves quickly and deals large damage when used right. Her signature weapon are the Knight's Edge, and her abilities are mainly offensive focused. Her abilities are Shadow Step. Dash in a line, dealing damage. After a short delay, a Gloom clone will dash from your initial position to you, dealing damage to enemies. Umbral Aura. Niss is empowered by Umbral magic, causing her next 3 dodges to pierce a nearby enemy with Shadow. Vengeful Shade. Briefly become immune to attacks and damage enemies in front of Niss. Gloom Shroud. For the next few seconds, Shadow Step can be used at no cost. Her passive ability is Lingering Shadow. After dodging, gain attack power for a short duration. Her weapon ability is called Daggerfall. Forms multiple magical daggers that float around the player and fire towards enemies as attacks when enemies come within range. Niss has a lot of quick moving abilities that require precision and timing, which is why she is rated to be the most complex Wayfinder with 4 out of 5. For your first class in Wayfinder, unless you really love that rogue feel, maybe pick someone else to begin with. Now we also have another Wayfinder that was recently revealed at PAX, Venomess, but her abilities and complexity are yet to be revealed. I would pick she would be somewhere above Silo's complexity level due to her dealing with poison that would work as a debuff, potentially in an AoE form, but also fast moving, similar to Niss. I'll be sure to cover more of Venomess and her abilities as we know more. All these Wayfinders have their own playstyle and offer a fresh way to play Wayfinder. Some styles less complex than others, but all exciting in their own way. If you're new to this type of game, complexity levels might matter more to you, but if you've played a lot of action RPGs, then this complexity isn't gonna matter. You've seen more complex stuff than this. Be sure to check out my other videos where I go over Season 1 and the details we can expect in that. Be sure to leave a like if this video helped you out, and consider subscribing for more upcoming Wayfinder content. Thanks guys, you've been watching Jadic Supreme.